and welcome to another booktube video from me, Lauren, from Lauren and the Books. Hope you're all very well on this Sunday. Today's video, it's almost the end of March. March comes to an end. The longest March in my lifetime comes to the end on Tuesday, and this video is wrapping up the books that I read in the second half of March. I read a hell of a lot of books earlier on in March. I did a 24 hours reading in a weekend video and read about 7 books that weekend. So I did a mid-month wrap up, which I will link down below along with my reading vlog if you haven't watched that. And this part of the video, this video, part 2, is the 5 books that I've read in the second half of March. So I will start with the 2 audiobooks that I've read. So the first one was Nightingale Point by Luan Goldie. I read this because it is on the long list for the Women's Prize for Fiction. I hadn't heard of it before, even though when I downloaded it, because I listened to it on audio, they had a little sticker on it saying it's part of the Radio 2 book club. And quite often I find that those books, the Radio 2 book club books, are books that are available in sort of supermarkets and a bit more readily available. So I was surprised to have not heard of this, knowing that it had been on the Radio 2 book club. I really enjoyed this, and I wouldn't have come to it any other way, so I have the Women's Prize for Fiction long list to thank for this. You are following a group of people who live in a tower block called Nightingale Point, and the first half of the book sort of builds up to this event that happens, a massive event. I don't really know if I want to say what the event is because I didn't know about it going in, and I feel like that added a lot to the book for me. But you'll find it about their regular lives. You follow a whole host of people. You follow 2 brothers, a woman called Mary who works as a nurse, and is sort of estranged from her husband. She has a lot to do with the brother's life. You follow someone called Elvis, who has learning difficulties and has a carer come in, amongst other people, and you're following their lives up until this massive event that happens, and then after that you're following them during the event and sort of rebuilding their lives after this event. Now, I really thought the audiobook was fantastic. It was really, really well narrated by, it was a cast narration, so each different character had a different narrator, which I felt worked perfectly, I just really thought it was brilliant. I really enjoyed it. Do I think it will make the shortlist? I'm not so sure, but that didn't stop my enjoyment of it at all. So I gave that 4 stars, and I would definitely recommend that. The second audiobook I listened to this month, and this is a chance for me to let you know that normally I listen to my audiobooks on Audible. I've been a member of Audible for almost 6 years, or over 6 years now, where I pay $7.99 a month and get 1 credit and listen to an audiobook. But recently I'd heard of people using Scribd, and since the lockdowns come in and people are having to social distance and self-isolate, Scribd have made their subscription free for the first month. So whereas with Audible you get 1 credit per month, Scribd you pay a fee. I think it's $9.99, and you get access. You can listen to as many as you want. I sort of always been typical of me, hadn't even looked into it and thought, oh, I bet they won't have the audiobooks I want, because that was just the way that I was thinking. And I thought, well, I'll try it while it's free for a month. I'll try it, and they've got loads of stuff on there, so would definitely recommend, even if you don't want to sign up in the long run for the paying $9.99 going forward, you can get the first month free, and that's what I've been doing. And I've downloaded quite a lot, and we'll get round to reading those. I'm not listening to as many audiobooks as normal because I had 2 weeks annual leave off in the middle of the month, and ordinarily I listen to audiobooks like on my way to and from work, so I haven't listened to as many as normal. But yeah, so Scribd, that's where I've listened to this second audiobook, and that's Notes to Self by Emily Pine. Emily Pine is an Irish author, and this is a book all about well, herself really, and events in her life, and it has a focus on her body, particularly in regards to eating disorders and infertility. It has an amazing essay which is focusing on infertility, and I'm not even, like, you will know, it's no secret that I don't want children, and normally I find books that have not so much, that's a bit of a sweeping generalisation I think, but like normally I'm not as interested in books that have things to do with sort of motherhood or fertility or infertility, but this particular essay about the infertility had an amazing sort of thread running through it of sisterhood, and her talking about her sister's miscarriage at quite a late time, and I was really moved by that essay and found it really insightful, and just like in amongst that sadness was really celebrating sisterhood. So I have really enjoyed this essay collection and found it really like it deals with some really heavy topics, but it hasn't felt too much, because I know there's a lot of heaviness going out there at the moment, but it hasn't felt too much. It's narrated by the author herself, which I always love because I feel like you get a lot more from it, and there's parts in there where like she's having to discuss rape and stuff like that, and you can hear the hurt in her voice, which really sort of hammers it home. But I thought this was fantastic, and this is one that I've listened to on Scribd, and I probably wouldn't have ever got round to listening to it on Audible because it's 5 hours long, and I feel like 1 credit on 5 hours feels like a bit of a waste on Audible. So this is like, I'm really pleased that I've signed up to Scribd because it's given me an opportunity to listen to sort of shorter things. So yeah, would definitely recommend, and I gave that 3 stars. And then the last 3 are books that I've read in the second half of the month. Now, all of them are books that I've talked about in previous videos, because 2 of them I've given 5 stars and I've really loved, and I mentioned in my books to get lost in video yesterday, and the first one is Glass Town by Isabel Greenberg, and I also mentioned this in my cozy reading night TBR and vlog, so you get the gist of it. I loved it. I thought this was fantastic. Isabel Greenberg has written 2 previous graphic novels, both of which that I've loved, but this is absolutely my favourite. This tells the story of the 4 Bronte siblings, Charlotte, Anne, Emily and Bramwell, and they're sort of this place they've invented called Glass Town, and they've invented it, and they all have sort of characters that they play within this place, and they write stories about it, and it's just fantastic. And you go into detail about each of the Bronte sisters, but each of the Bronte siblings. Sorry, I didn't even know there was a Bronte boy, by the way, so that was news to me. And then you find out about the people that they've invented in their stories, and their personality traits and things like that. The illustrations and the colour palette are, as always with Isabel Greenberg, some of my favourite ever. It's just fantastic, and really sort of like, I can't say it any other way than I really get lost in it. What I really like is the stuff that's sort of set in this world is sort of set in sort of brown and grey tones and things like that, and then when they're talking about Glass Town, things really brighten up, and it's just really clever things like that. This for me was an amazing sort of how did I put it, like a really amazing experiment in imagination, like being able to tell a story about a group of people and then their imaginary world, and then those 2 worlds coming together. It just was unlike anything I've ever read before, and really loved it. Would really recommend. Make a beautiful gift. Make like just loved it. We'll be going back to it and revisiting it many times. I'm absolutely certain. It was perfect. There's gonna be a lot of cozy reading nights coming up over the next coming weeks. David and I have said that we're going to do a cozy reading night every other week, and this is perfect for it. It's cozy, you can read it in one sitting, you get absolutely transported into it. Really loved it. 5 stars. Highly recommend. And the next book is also a 5-star book, highly recommend, and that's Grown Ups by Marion Keyes. This is the book that we're reading for my Patreon book club, and we're actually discussing it tonight. I feel like I'll mention Patreon book club here, because if people, everyone's got a bit more time on their hands. Patreon book club is something that I run over on Patreon. It's like a virtual tipping jar, and if you join the $5 tier, $5 or above tier, you can join a book club where at the end of each month we do a live show. You get the link from the Patreon feed, and at the end of each month at 7 o'clock on the last Sunday of the month we discuss a book. It's like a live show on YouTube, and then guys, people comment like by typing, and I read those comments out, etc. Really love doing it. It's something I look forward to doing every month, but particularly this month, I think, because everyone's sort of everyone's lives are a bit odd at the moment, aren't they? So I'm looking forward to getting back into the sort of normality of just doing something that I would be doing at home anyway. And yeah, this month we're going to be discussing Grown Ups. I will leave all the details for Patreon book club down below, by the way, if you're interested in joining. and we're discussing Grown Ups by Marion Keyes. This book came about because in March we were the two options that I gave people to pick were both Irish authors, and this one, which I was really hoping it would. It's a bit of a beast, but I was really hoping it would because I haven't read much women's contemporary fiction, and I'd heard really good things about this, and I'd actually heard Marion be interviewed on two separate podcasts, two of my favourite podcasts, Fortunately and How to Fail with Elizabeth Day, and I thought she sounded amazing, and the book sounded amazing on both of those podcasts. And actually, before all this madness happened, one of the last things I did before we all went into lockdown was me and my best friend went to see Stacey Dooley at the Barbican, talking about her I'll put this book down for a minute, talking about her experiences with filming. She's an investigative journalist and makes programmes for BBC Three, and she was in conversation with Marion Keyes, and I didn't know that was going to happen until the day when I saw on Marion Keyes' Twitter, she was like, oh, I'm interviewing Stacey. So I was like, that's fantastic that I've had three of my things that I would have listened to anyway have sort of bought this book, Grown Ups, to me, and I really want to get to read it. And I got David to buy it from me when he was out one day, when he was at work, because I wanted to read it so much, and I absolutely loved it. It's a family saga. You're talking about, you're following the Casey family. There's three brothers in this family, but the majority of the story is about their wives and their children's lives and things like that. There's a whole host of sort of topics covered within this book, like heavy stuff as well as like light-hearted sort of family events. But there's things like menopause and eating disorders and money worries and sort of divorce and things like that, and loss of a parent, and whilst these are tackled in a sort of sensitive and thorough way, I would say, the whole feeling of the book is something of light sort of jauntiness. I've written down, I've just been writing my notes when I discussed this for Patreon Book Club tonight, so I'll be saying this again tonight, but like, I could pick this up and read this for sort of 5 minutes, and also pick this up and read it for an hour and enjoy it as much both times I was reading it. It just sort of, it was really transporting and perfect for what I wanted at the moment, and I loved it. I gave it 5 stars. It's set in Ireland. Like, you guys know that I love a book set in Ireland anyway, but the sort of use of Irish slang and everything felt really comforting and cosy to me, and yeah, absolutely loved it. Would highly recommend. If you're looking to get into a big book at this moment, this is one I would definitely recommend. And then the last book I'm going to discuss is a book that it's a reread, and a book that I'm discussing again in another book club that I do. I run a book club on Facebook with my friends, and this is actually what I've put to those people today, that we're going to sort of share the duties now. So whereas previously I've always picked the book and done the questions, I've asked if now we could maybe share those duties out. So this is the last book that I'll be picking for a while, but this is Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid, which I read, I don't know if it was last year or if it was the year before, and the plan was that I'd heard such good things about the audiobook of this book that I was going to revisit it via audio, and it just never happened for me because I didn't have the credit for it on Audible. It wasn't available on Scribd. I was like, well, I've got the book, I'll reread it. I really like this book. It feels really original and really different. It's the story of the band, the Six, and a solo singer, Daisy Jones, and how they come together and write this album together. And you're following all the members of the band and Daisy herself and the sort of lead of the band, Billy, and their partners and stuff. And it's written like a radio transcription. So there's no sort of it's written as like as an interview, which makes it feel really real. It makes it feel like it really happened, and sometimes you have to sort of remind yourself that these things didn't happen, but you can completely see that they could have happened with other bands. It felt a bit different. I read it really quickly. I feel like I took more in this second time. I'd read it the first time round. I enjoyed it, but I feel like I took more in this time, and maybe having a bit of a background idea of what was going to happen, I could sort of see things lead into those events and stuff like that. But yeah, would recommend it. I feel like it's slightly different to your normal sort of fiction, but yeah, enjoyed it very much. So yeah, so those are the 5 books that I read in the second half of the month. We'll be interested to hear what you guys have been reading this month. Have you read any of these books? I've also got 2 other Marion Keyes books out from the library before the library closed, so I'll be getting to those at some point, I imagine. Hope you're all doing very well, and I will see you all again soon for another BookTube video. Goodbye.